All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Online Leftists. Cappy, how are you doing so far today?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there.
All right, this is going to be... Oh, you're hanging in there. Go ahead. What? Sorry,
I'm
fired up.
I had a long day. I was out doing yard work, and it had to be 90 degrees today, so I'm fucking half dead. But we're here. We're alive.
I'm beat up. I'm on my swoletariat arc. I've been in the gym heavy for the last 2 weeks.
Good.
Yeah, beat down, so I'm here. I'm caffeinated. I got some B vitamins in me. I'm juiced up. I got some sirloin, 90-10 fat ground sirloin burgers. No bun, no cheese, just mustard.
Oh.
And some green beans. Yeah, that's right, Cappy. I like my burger the way I like my Marxism. No fat, no frills, no extra bullshit. Just hardcore, pure Marxism-Leninism.
I don't know. I like my burgers with some shit on it, and I like a bun. I like a good bun.
If you actually liked a burger with shit on it, you probably would get along very good with these people that we're covering today, which is left communists.
Left communists, yeah.
Because that is what their theory amounts to, right? It's perfectly
shit.
good burger with some extra shit thrown on that just puts everybody off and doesn't seem to serve any purpose.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, they're just like instead of the typical American cheese, maybe easily meltable and very aesthetic, that graces the top of hamburgers, ranging from the ones you would get in a restaurant to emojis. They throw a turd emoticon on there.
Yeah.
No good. Okay, so Cappy, what is left communism? Oh, and we like to say for the audience, now we would like to issue each and every one of our detractors a sort of pithy, witty rejoinder, but some of you guys are just sort of like impotent weirdos that only exist online and seemingly are online panelists, hobbyists that are antithetical to organizing and the granular details of objective reality, which despite your protests you are a part of. So we're just sort of doing a very quick slapsadaisical reply to the whole lot of you, because none of you put together. Every left com on the earth is about as useful as one Chinese proletariat.
Yeah, I don't even think they're that useful. That guy actually engages in praxis.
Just by existing.
Yeah.
Is there a sort of like a moral luck? Imagine you spawn in China and you're like, oh, all I have to do is like literally get a part-time job and just like exist, and I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, a decent amount of working class people are members of the party too. The base of the party is made up of, well, it's actually a lot more fishermen and farmers than industrial working class people, but it's like fishermen, farmers, and then like more like service industry type jobs and tech jobs, and then the industrial workers are actually...
who would not agree that one proletariat is a Chinese proletariat? One Chinese prole is worth as much as every left com put together?
Who?
Left coms.
Oh, no,
So
yeah.
what are they?
So... It's there's not one single answer to what a left com is. You can't point at one coherent and cohesive like set of positions or theories or anything like that. It's sort of broad, but generally speaking, they all have quite a few things in common. But it's anything from Bordigists, councilists. Some may call themselves Luxemburgists. I think that libertarian Marxists fall into the left com sort of category. It's basically the left wing of the communist movement.
So that sort of like begs the question: is there a right wing of communism?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
What would that constitute? Not to get too far off subject.
It would probably be like Bucharianism and stuff like that. Bukharin was more of a rightist. You could argue that the CPC had gone a little bit too far right, which Xi Jinping has sort of brought them back towards the center. That's why we love him. And there are others than that. I mean, we could consider the ACP to be rightists. They're probably the most right you could get before you stop being a communist. You know what I mean? But yeah, no.
Okay.
So
So what are some of these things that you were talking about here? You were talking about councilists, Bordigists, and communizers. Now we know what communizers are from some of our study of like Gilles Duvet and these other the Invisible Committee endnotes and some of these like and. I'm telling the audience here, that stuff is so not substantial. It's hard to take serious. It's basically anarchists using Marxian language to say utopian things with like no plan.
It's nonsense.
It's not. It's just a meme. Just like if somebody says they're a communizer, you can safely ignore their opinion. It's just like, oh, okay, sort of like disability detected. Never mind. Okay, sir, have a good day, and just go about your day and continue like reading and being practical. It doesn't matter. They're insignificant. Okay, so what is a Bordigist? That's I guess someone who
Italian leftcoms. That follow Bordiga, who like this is where it gets confusing because some leftcoms will say, "Hey, I don't like Lenin," but Bordiga was like, "No, I love Lenin. In fact, I'm a true Leninist." Right? And then he held positions that would be very counter to Marxism-Leninism as we know it. Then you have councilists, which take influence from.
So basically, he was the left version. He was the leftcom version. A la, he sort of kind of dictated what a leftcom was. Although Lenin himself dictated what a leftcom was. So in reading State and Revolution, and I just took a cursory glance at left communism and infantile disorder. And it was way too long, so I read the Cliff Notes and the Red Pen video on it. I didn't have time to read it before this. I will read it over the course of the next week. However, he seems to be beating up the same people. Kautsky, Bernstein, all the rogues gallery. The same.
Yeah, so it's always those guys.
So what he taught, social democratic, entryist, reformist people who were in good with the bourgeoisie. And after the Russian Revolution started kind of sided against the proletariat and sort of derided their successful revolution.
Yeah, I mean, so like in left communism, he's kind of focused on the certain mistakes of European communist parties, particularly Germany and Britain. I don't think he actually talks about. I think he does mention like. As he put, Comrade Bordiga once or twice in that book, but I actually don't think he's criticizing the Italian leftcoms in that. I think it's mostly focused on Germany and Britain. Yeah.
I said all that to say earlier, so Bordiga is someone who, similar to Gonzalo in Peru, thinks that he has distilled the true doctrine. So he differs from Stalin's distillation of what Marxism-Leninism is, and Bordiga thinks that he has the better version of it.
Yeah, I mean, so he considers himself a Leninist, and he's part of the variant of leftcoms that support the October Revolution, but just criticize it for some of its mistakes. You know what I mean? So
bound to make mistakes, though.
Yeah, and I mean, that's honestly easier to work with than somebody who wholesale rejects the October Revolution.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So you have that. You have the Luxemburgists, which are the council communists.
So the Luxemburgists are the people who support the thesis as distilled by Rosa Luxemburg.
Yeah, generally, yeah, and they're very upset that the Bolsheviks absorbed the factory committees, into the unions and kind of broke up the workers' committees and stuff like that.
And they did break up those worker committees, and they did so because is it just hard to herd cats? And they found that there was a what do you call it when everybody was fighting individualistic incentives for saying, well, like, look, we're a widget factory. We need to keep this. What's good for this widget factory? It's like, well, you need to worry about what's good for the whole country.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's that, which I've sent it to you before. The International Labor Office had that study called the Trade Union Movement in Soviet Russia, where they talked about it. And basically they said that the committees only considered the individual interests of their own undertaking. And it sort of led to competitions between like factories and stuff like that, which led to like hoarding and higher prices and so on and so forth. So there were
playing
a lot
devil's advocate here. So the individualistic incentives for proprietary collectives of warehouses and the workers in those warehouses versus one that was done by command, which one do you think it would be easier to get to the point that leftcoms seethe, cope, and whine about, which is commodity production or production based on need and distribution based on need? Which do you think is closer, would get to that goal closer?
I think
individualistic incentives or a top-down command thing adhering to a plan.
Yeah, no, everyone has to be adhering to a national plan. That's, I mean, right. Look, if this would have worked, the Bolsheviks would have kept it, but it didn't. And so they didn't get rid of it altogether. People always said that, they disbanded. But what they did was they absorbed it into the trade union system, because the trade unions were less concerned with like local and private interests, and it just worked better to do it like that. They could get everybody, all the individuals thinking on a national basis what everybody needed to do. So it was less concerned with, your own little petty individual concerns.
Right, on a factory versus factory level, and more of a collectivist, industry-wide setting.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, which then makes less touch points to wrangle with the state.
Absolutely, yeah.
Do you now, Cappy? So I have ruminated with you in the past. Do you think that these leftcoms are just people that can't turn an apple in their head, or is it people that just don't have enough lived experience to actually understand human beings that they seek to or don't seek to better the conditions of? Like Conifesto said, I don't care if China's making it better for the proletariat. I don't care. Yeah. Then you might not be a Marxist at all, Doc. Like, I don't know. See, that's kind of like the number one thing. Like, which part in Capital did Marx say, I don't care about the conditions of the proletariat?
Yeah, no, he didn't. He never
He
said
didn't
that.
say that?
And this is one of the issues, is that leftcoms, look, I would say that they're divorced from praxis, but back in the day, in the time of Lenin, the leftcoms he was addressing were very much organized and were trying to do revolution. So and they were still like that back then. So ultimately, the biggest issue I see is dogmatism, and some people will cringe when they hear that, and I talk about it a lot, but dogmatism is a real fucking bad issue in the communist movement. And
I would say it goes beyond dogmatism. It's almost like a religious like fervor.
They're fanatical. Yes, absolutely fanatical. And the funny thing is, when you boil down Lenin's left-wing communism and infantile disorder, he is literally criticizing these people for dogmatism, which we can get into that a little bit later because I want to talk about it anyway. Okay,
what are the origins of left communism?
If I remember correctly, it was around the time Lenin wrote that work.
In 1920?
Yeah, there was a short-lived faction. So there was a short-lived left Bolshevik faction, but it sort of died out by 1918. It was around from like 1907 to 1918. But following the Bolshevik Revolution, and when it was time for the Civil War, they literally realized that their views were insane, and they were like, "Oh no, wait, we're with it." And that included people like Bogdanov and stuff like that. So these are people who Lenin has criticized in other works. But then it was like the 1910s, 1920s among the Dutch and the Germans and the Italians that we started to see left communism, or different variations. I don't know what we consider it. I like to just call them all ultras. But we started to see this left communist current start to crop up.
Is a sort of uniting feature of these people for whom they lacked the material conditions from which to apply their Marxism? Is this something that lives as an ideal because of a divorce they have from applying it?
That could be part of it, but honestly, to me, it seems like a reaction to Bolshevism.
Okay. I would say that is definitely true in 1925.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I guess it's still trying to, and then
it's the same shit.
It's the same shit. It's just anti-USSR Cold War propaganda that these liberals who call themselves leftcoms have not fully unpacked yet.
Yeah, no. In What Is to Be Done, Lenin's criticizing left communist positions, such as that communists shouldn't work within reactionary unions or bourgeois parliaments, or have temporary alliances with certain non-communist formations. And we still see this today. Conifesto just recently posted a video talking about, oh no, don't engage in parliamentarism. You know what I mean? They're completely against alliances with non-communist forces.
Do you think they get that because of Marx's and Engels' hate for parliamentary politics and bureaucracy?
Yeah, I mean, it could be part of that, but
that context was in applying what will. But when Marx and Engels wrote about that, they talked about how their ideal state wouldn't have that. Not that it is not beneficial to participate in that in a bourgeois democracy or in a state where there's not been a socialist revolution yet.
Yes. Yeah. No. Lenin was very clear about it. Of course, to us communists, parliamentarism is, politically speaking, obsolete. But for the average everyday person, and we've mentioned this before, I think on the podcast, the people were still engaged in parliamentarism. So it was, to us communists who have the consciousness, we understand it's obsolete, but they don't. So we have to go to where they're at. Not only does this give us a gauge of where they're at, but it shows them who we are. And then it's also
free advertising.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it demonstrates to them that the system is it's fucked. That no, you can't, right? It defeats itself, because if they like you and they vote for you and you don't get elected, they realize that. That's what happened in 2016 to me. Like, oh, Bernie Sanders would be good. Then he got fucked, out by the DNC, and I was like, oh, we can't elect in, so like you can't do that. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what? It'd be another thing with Bernie and AOC and these sheepdogs, or quote-unquote opportunists, as Lenin might call them, right? These sort of bourgeoisie-oriented socialists from the waist up, or whatever you want to call that, who sort of say rosy revolutionary things, but policies all sort of defect to bourgeoisie-compatible left points. It would be different if, like, for instance, I was like, man, AOC could have gone a very different path. Chat's like, what do you mean? I'm like, she could be a gadfly to Congress. You won't believe the committee meeting that just went on in here. These people are ripping you off big time. She could have been a gadfly for socialism there, but no, she wants to sit there and make nice with the system in order to appease and grovel and still get on shitty committees and be politically inert and worthless. Like, what is she even doing there? They're just, other than crying and voting for Iron Dome.
They're smart members of the bourgeoisie. They understand what they're doing. You know what I mean? They know damn right that communism's dangerous, and there's one way to avert it, and that's give people things. Make their lives easier so they don't revolt. You know what I mean? That's something else I wanted to bring up, because it's... Lenin wasn't advocating you go out there and vote for someone like Bernie Sanders either. He was saying that you should run communists and vote for communists. You know what I mean? So I think some people get that wrong. That's like Hassan has brought that up to try and defend voting for democratic socialists. And it's like...
Or like people who claim to be Irish who live in England and vote Green Party. Yeah. People like that, who get it fucked up. And also I would like to put a finer point on that. No. Lenin said you can't be afraid to make reluctant compromises with reactionary forces. He was very ruthlessly pragmatic, and he was like, and you have to do stuff at the legislative / political level, and work with, you hold your nose and try to work and get common ground with some reactionary organizations, because you're trying to appeal to their base, number one. And number two, you also have to do illegal stuff. Yeah. You cannot be a pussy.
No, yeah, he talks about both legal and illegal methods. You know what I mean? So, Lenin was very pragmatic, and that's something that the Chinese communists, they always say it, that a communist needs to be pragmatic, and especially in the world we live in today, because Marx couldn't even fucking, he look at this. This is a fucking wreck.
How full of shit are these people, and how little have they actually engaged with Lenin's and Engels' distillation and arguments for which is the best distillation I've seen for Marx, Engels, and Lenin? I would argue, right? They were basically have PhDs in Marxism.
Yeah,
effectively.
Look, Engels is I love Engels. A lot of left comms don't like Engels. Engels is great, and Lenin is the greatest Marxist since Marx. Like, no doubt about it.
What got me in State and Revolution is all the passages where Lenin was pointing out, like, you guys are claiming to be Marxist, but Marx was for a transitional state, and you want it to be a fucking republic like America has. He didn't say it in so many words, but I'm sitting there reading and I'm like, holy shit, Marx was, and he's taking these clips of Marx, these, and I'm reading, I'm like, wait, which is effectively DPRK, People's Republic. That's what they have. They're transitional states that are republics. You know, like Marx fucking wanted, you fake Marxoids.
Yeah, well,
holy
that's
fucking
like,
shit.
Marx was in favor of free trade so long as it helped to ripen the proletarian revolution. Like, they were against protectionism and were like, no, we should, like, it would be good to have free trade all around the world and have this connected world system because it will hasten the proletarian revolution and the new world. You know what I mean?
Even in the 1870s, Marx was talking about like the beneficial qualities of interconnected economies.
Yeah,
He was talking about that back then.
Yeah. Well,
so like, and it just really makes me wonder, for as much as they say, don't read Marxists, read Marx, it seems like they have in fact only read Marxists and not read Marx. Because they have read left communist distillations, which have perverted and corrupted the core of Marx. Because Marx is pretty clear, brother, you need to take the state, you need to fucking run the state out of town effectively, do whatever you can, smash them, destroy the bourgeoisie state, create a new state, and by the by, I can't tell you what to do. The republic looks pretty good, and also be afraid of fucking don't have a parliament.
Well, yeah, you see,
that's basically it.
I think from my reading, Marx and Engels both have made it clear in many of their works that after the proletariat seizes state power, the building of socialism is a prolonged process, and it's not something that happens at one stroke. It's as Marx says in the manifesto, by degrees. So that means little by little. So this, again, they understood dialectical. They understood dialectical materialism in the same way the modern Chinese did. They're like, look, this transitionary state that we're going to have is going to have facets and features and characteristics of the capitalistic state, and that does not mean that we should retreat from the socialist revolution. In fact, we should get closer and closer and closer to the quote-unquote real one. So you use the transitionary state to sort of preempt and facilitate the conditions by which the quote-unquote permanent revolution or the international whatever the fuck you want to happen, you facilitate that via. Sure. And I would argue that China has done a very good job of that, despite the errant Maoist here who were mad that some Nepalese party didn't get, the red carpet rolled out for them. Yeah. It's kind of funny when Marxists don't understand, like, contradictory things. Like, they're like, wait, this doesn't make sense. It's contradictory. It throws me off. And it's like, when Lenin was, when they were doing the NEP in Russia, a lot of people were like, I don't like this. This is an abandonment of socialism. And Lenin was like, no, it's not. And they're like, no, yeah, this is a step backward. And Lenin was like, no, this is actually a step forward, because our conditions before this was this scattered peasant production, this sort of petty bourgeois type production. And now we have this state capitalism, right, where we can start developing and taking a step forward towards socialism. So it's like, it's not
and defend the project better.
Yes, of course. But it's
having a perfectly realized pure socialist country that affirms to all of the weird anarchists and anprim people and anti-industrialists and whatever that are hiding among the ranks of the left communists, pretending to be Marxists but secretly are utopian anarchists, right? If you had that quote-unquote perfect, nebulous, heretofore unseen, unproven, and unvetted state, how are they going to protect it without a state industry?
Yeah.
And workers building up the things so as to protect it from rogue actors on the world stage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But that does come down to like dogmatism, because a lot of people read Marx and they take it as a religion, which is something we've also talked about a million times. But this is why even Lenin's first example in Infantile Disorder, when he's talking about essentially these European communists attempting to apply abstract principles across the board in all circumstances. And the example he gives is at one point the Bolsheviks boycotted the Russian Tsarist parliament, and that was in 1905. And the reason why they did that was because the revolution was currently unfolding. But later in 1908, when the conditions changed, some of the left Bolsheviks, they wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to repeat the 1905 tactics, but under completely new conditions. So they treated that boycott like it was some sort of universal principle, which was incorrect. So Lenin was like, no, we have to run in this parliament. You know what I mean?
Isn't it? See, all of these things sort of affirm the need for. I was on Chairman Mayo. I was scrolling by. He was on a live. He had four viewers. Apropos of nothing, I just throwing that out there. But and in that live, he was giving a cursory explainer of what the Vanguard is, and he's like, oh, the Vanguard, as relates to like Lenin in his time, just sort of like a transition government to sort of like keep everything in line and da. But but the way that modern MLs talk about it is as if there's only you can only need to listen to the good smart people or something like that, and it's just like. It's like anti-person, and then someone in his chat's like, yeah, and it's just like holier than thou or like sanctimonious. I'm like, both of you are dumb.
Yeah, that's
why
not
would
true.
You would be completely removed from any policy making? Stop. You guys combined have an IQ of 130. You would not be. You would just enjoy the benefits of Marxism-Leninism. Please shut the fuck up about holier than thou, fucking academic bourgeoisie people. Holy shit! Lenin was literally referring to the bourgeoisie intelligentsia as much as he was talking about Marxists who wrote journals for other Marxists and things like that. It's subject matter experts and people who are in fact smarter than you, and that is okay. Cappy, should I be in charge of nuclear reactors?
No.
No, I should not. I don't even know
what it takes.
Some people are subject matter experts when it comes to that stuff. I'm not a fucking economist. I am not. There is some subject matter expertise I have, and that might be in graphic design and conspiracy theories. So I could see me on a council for like maybe propaganda or something, just sort of like well, don't say that because you're going to activate the fucking reptile brain of like 30% of the population. Use this verbiage instead of that.
Oh, fuck.
I could see me being helpful, punching up some notes, but I should be wholly removed from economic policy, science councils, and anything like that.
Sure. I would fucking clean the toilets in the party meeting room bathrooms. I don't care.
With your tongue.
Sure.
That's how much of a Marxist-Leninist you are. Yeah.
I don't think that assertion from them is correct either, because even if we go to China today, this would to act as if the CPC excludes the broad masses is completely incorrect. People do have a say, not only in their local politics, but in their national politics, and every socialist state has done that. This is like, I've talked about this on my TikTok, but in the Soviet Union, this was heavily done through the newspapers. If you had an issue, you brought it up in the newspapers, and then the editors of those newspapers would it was actually their job to not just report on it, but to investigate it, hit up the specific, state organ or whatever that deals with stuff like that, and to try and reconcile it. And so you did have a say. And within your factory, you had a say on the factory newspaper. The people do have a say. That's why there are neighborhood committees, or like in Cuba, the committees for the defense of the revolution, and this, that, and the other thing. It's not like a small group of people having all of the say and just forcing everybody to follow it. That's not the way we act.
And not only that, I'm not even against that. Nature does not distribute its gifts evenly, and some people are much smarter than other people, irrespective of education and anything else like that. And I want the super smart people to be in charge of the zero-sum game knife fight that is states in our current, worldwide economic modal.
Well, for instance, in the DPRK, not everyone has a direct vote, which is something a lot of left comms would like, by the way, is a sort of direct democracy. But what happens is everybody in like one industry, they'll all vote amongst themselves for the person in their factory.
Didn't Marx himself say that universal suffrage was like a pipe dream and that doesn't bring you any closer to socialism?
I don't remember, honestly.
Yeah, he's like, okay, yeah, universal suffrage, and which is like sort of basically direct democracy, right? Everybody has a voice, everybody has a say.
It
that's
can
not
be,
going to
but
move,
it doesn't have to be. Right.
It's not going to move the needle for your socialism. It's not going to happen. You have to get rid of that state. You have to get rid of that state.
It's not feasible anyway. You can't have every single person vote on every single issue. I mean, it's funny because the people who talk about that are against bureaucracies. Holy shit. If you think a bureaucracy is bad, wait until every single person has to vote on whether or not this person gets executed for being a rapist. I mean, fuck,
100%. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't scale. I think that they have because they lack the gift of having the opportunity to apply their theory.
Yeah, no.
That's why these ideas malinger for a century.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. What I was going to say, though, was the DPRK system's really good because everyone in a factory, they'll vote amongst themselves on who they think in the factory is the best representative of them. And then that person will go on to like the local people's assembly, and then they vote for the next level up and so on and so forth till you get to the top. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a fair system that works good, and it's not direct, but you have a representative to represent you who you voted for in the assembly. So it's the direct democracy thing it's such a weird complaint.
Well, and I mean, what they're really failing to understand is, it's like, do you want school elections? Because that's how you get demagogues. You're going to get a person that is going to appeal to the lowest common denominator. That's how you get fascism. Is the people who are then mediating what they say based on public popularity. That is not good, and that's what we have in America, and I would say, like, that is not what we should have. Like, we should almost never have a politician on camera saying stuff.
Yeah, because sometimes what's popular and what needs to be done are two different things. You know what I mean? So
100%.
It's, and
these left homs would get together with their direct democracy and vote for Kool-Aid and all the water fountains or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I don't think that they understand.
Electrolyte, it has electrolytes. It's what plants need.
Kool-Aid does. Kool-Aid has electrolytes?
It can. With this scoop of pre-workout that you can get at online, use code online leftist to get Stalinade flavor pre-workout or something. I don't know.
I was going to say, that shit don't have electrolytes. That's a bag of sugar and some water.
It probably has something in there. I know maybe, Gatorade does.
Gatorade does, yeah.
Gatorade does.
Yeah, I don't know. The left comms, they don't understand any practical considerations that have to be made, like, by ruling communist parties.
I don't think that is quite true, and there's a differentiation in between some left comms, like Salted Coke. He's almost not even a left comm in the way that people would understand it. He doesn't really have beef with Lenin. He likes Tito.
Which is why he hates Stalin.
Yeah, which is why he hates Stalin, and that's sort of like, brother, let it go.
Well, he differs from us, whereas, like, he says, like, I like Deng, but, like, he doesn't consider China to be socialist, but he thinks Deng's, like, developmental policies are based, right? And that's probably because he's from a country that is not so developed.
I don't think anybody would consider the dictatorship of the proletariat socialism, and even Marx said it would have very many characteristics of capitalism and the social relations of capitalism from Marx's own fucking mouth.
I don't want to speak for him either. I would have to ask
Marx?
him. No. Salted.
I'll speak for Marx.
Salted, but I don't think
Hey, stop. Hey, that dust is just where I wanted. No, honey, I don't want to take a shower.
No, I was going to say, I'm not sure if Salted considers them to be a DOTP or not. But also, like, Salted, people like Salted and Kagura, if you remember them, they're not, like, I always say to both of them, you guys are bad left comms.
They're MLs, basically.
Yeah, I mean...
They're MLs who want councilism.
The thing is like, Yeah, no. Salted likes like the Tito style. What the fuck was the name of that the system in Yugoslavia? The God damn it. My
Probably,
brain.
I don't know, but I can tell you probably had to do with enjoying some kind of root as a root in your breakfast, like a tuber,
Yeah.
or something like a turnip or a carrot, and probably some grain alcohol to wash it down.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say is that Salted is a proponent of the workers' self-management of Yugoslavia.
That sounds stupid.
It did work for them. I mean, you know.
Okay. Oh,
but-
really?
Well,
let me look on the map for Yugoslavia.
Yeah,
Did it really work out? It sounds like another fucking loser revolution. I don't know. I'm sorry, dog.
I'm
then
sorry,
what happened?
Salted.
Then what happened, dog?
Yeah, the collapse of Yugoslavia was a very complex thing. I wouldn't. The other day, someone was like,
When did it collapse?
Technically the 90s, the NATO intervention in Yugoslavia.
Oh, so it was wholly dependent on the USSR to exist.
Well, I would argue that they probably wouldn't have bombed Yugoslavia if the USSR did exist. I do think that was,
that's a fair point.
People didn't fuck around half as much when the USSR existed. And at that point, I don't know, maybe they had better relations. I think after Stalin died, they were repaired a little bit. But yeah, no, it was a NATO intervention that.
But to be clear, the systems that Tito set forth ultimately failed, and it got balkanized.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah. And
yet the belief in that system persists somehow.
Wow.
I don't know. You know, how long of a run did they have? Is Yugoslavia the best left-com example?
I don't consider them to be left-com myself.
I wouldn't either.
But they are a fine example of socialism, and I know the MLs that are listening to this are going crazy right now, but let's not play team politics. They did their thing. It was better off under Tito and the Yugoslavian socialist system than it was before, and then it was after. And, you know, they had issues with Stalin. Stalin had issues with them, but they did do good things for their people, and it shows because many people throughout the Balkans want that back.
One of the things that I've noticed in this is just sort of like the actual dearth of understanding that most of these left communists have. They're literally armchair philosophizers.
Yes.
They have nothing but very many Marxist-Leninists are the same. They're sloganeering, buzzword espousing, Stalin edit making, vapid. But at least they're regurgitating something that worked.
Well,
that was the thing. I would agree that, or I would say venture that many MLs are just as dogmatic and just sort of theory-wise, impotent theory-wise as the left comms. However, what they are cut and paste spamming and regurgitating by rote is shit that has some sort of historical precedence for working.
Yeah, they're basic. They have a lot in common with left comms, and in fact, it's just recently I saw a Hoxhaism commenting under one of Spontek's videos, being like, "Oh, it's so like refreshing to hear this. I'd rather like hear this than the modern day revisionists and blah blah blah." But so it's like, you know, whereas like the left comms are sort of dogmatic with Marx, the like anti-revisionist MLs like Maoists and Hoxhaists are just dogmatic with Stalin and Mao. Like,
but they're the revisionists. Marx wanted a transitional republic that had a lot of characteristics and perpetuated the capitalist social relation to some extent. That's what he saw as inevitable and said, and literally took pains to say. You should not be put off by this. We should just continue to sort of work on these contradictions. But right now, this is what it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't even think Marx wanted that so much as that's just how he saw history unfolding, and that there really is no way to escape it. But like most of these people, like they don't treat theory and practice as if the two have a unity, right? Through practice, Marxism-Leninism has been proven to be one of the most successful revolutionary socialist movements. And we understand that. However, in the modern day, if you just deny all of the gains, all of the theories from modern Marxists, or in the left comms case, if you deny anything from Lenin on, I would argue that you're not a Marxist anymore, because
you're
on.
You're a religious regurgitator of historical materialism from 100 years ago.
Yeah, and
which makes you completely worthless. You're like an Internet Explorer meme. You're like internet. You're 100 years late with the joke, brother. We heard that 100 years ago. There has been many new developments since then.
Yeah, and it leads these people into a position where they then begin to be anti-communist because. And they have a blanket condemnation of anybody who's actually attempted to put Marxism into practice, which of course is not ever going to look as great as the ideal itself, because reality is messy, right? We live in a very messy reality. So it's like, it's almost treating Marxism like an abstract and static ideal rather than an actual movement to liberate the working class. And
they're applying it in a utopian sense as an idealized final state, and not a sort of foot in the door to get there and sort of immanentize that situation.
They do engage in utopianism, sort of building a blueprint for a perfect society in their head, and they absolutely do engage in idealism, yes.
And that seems like something that Marx, as fastidiously as he would attack something like the idea of wages and labor and use and exchange value and everything else like that, he could like write a billion words on each topic. When left to like what should be done or what the state should do, he was like, question mark. You're going to have to figure that. We're going to see. Because, and it was very interesting in State and Revolution, the sort of the dynamic nature. Now, you've pointed out in the past how Marx shifted where he thought the loci of revolutionary potential was, right?
Yeah.
He initially thought it was in the hyper-developed England and Germany and cosmopolitan areas. And that shifted over his lifetime. And he had similarly had a shift to what he thought about the Paris Commune pre-1848 and after. After, he had a very different idea. He's like, oh, well, actually, or it was at the 1871. I think it was the 1871, where he's like, this is going to be disastrous. And he even like wrote against it. And then after it, he's like, well, hold on. This is actually based as fuck.
1871, I think that's when because that was an example to Marx and Engels, and then after it failed, they were like, no, like this was a good example of a dictatorship of the proletariat, but it needs more authority and centralization. You know what I mean?
Right, not less.
And they were also like, you also have to smash the bourgeois state and then build your own. You know what I mean?
And you also have to watch out for, ironically, rearguard anarchists.
Oh, yeah. They'll fuck your shit
who
up.
ally with... So there's a couple questions here, and I don't want to get too nitty in the details of it. And say yes or no, can you briefly describe what the bureaucracy was? Because it seems Marx, Engels, and Lenin were all railing against bureaucracy. It seems like they wanted the same thing, but only people that had workers' wages and not salaries. Would that be fair?
What, with bureaucracy? Wait, what do you mean?
Yeah, with bureaucrats. What the fuck is a bureaucrat according to Marx? Because I just see it as somebody who like handles the necessary paperwork for a specific task or branch.
The thing is bureaucracy is bad, but bureaucracy is inevitable in any sort of big system you're going to have. It's hard to escape. So like,
yeah,
the Soviet Union,
really get. I was mentally disconnecting from that when I've been reading these last couple books. I'm like, okay, yeah, but you're going to have paperwork, dog. You're going to have bureaucrats. I don't understand.
These countries always fault the bureaucracy. You do have to try and limit that as much as you can. And bureaucrats are bad because they're like careerists. They'll get a job. Yeah, they'll fucking...
I would say like it's bad in that it becomes a vector by which people can get useless jobs, useless appointed jobs. They can siphon money off of the coffers by appointing their cousins to be the czar of nothing, the czar of carrots, and
it complicates shit. We've all been to a DMV. It's fucking awful. You know what I mean? So
I low key, I don't even think DMVs are that bad. It's one place that's pretty much you can reconcile almost everything wrong with your car and your driver's license.
Yeah,
and
you just got to go to this window, and then they send you to that one. And you got to fill out this paperwork, and then you get called over here and over there. You know what I mean?
And where it is bad, it's sort of by design. I feel like
it's a poor design.
Yeah. or done intentionally. Okay, but let's get back. Oh, so there's also I was sort of disconnecting when they were anti-bureaucracy. I was like, oh, I don't know how you're going to get around that. Your solution to it is just to get rid of salaries and replace it with wages. It seems like that's all I heard. Position people there and have it be led like the post office and have people get wages commensurate with other similar work or whatever. I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that, but that doesn't change what the task is. And the task is dealing around with fucking liaising and doing paperwork and shit.
I would say that all Marxists are, against bureaucracy, but we recognize that this isn't, how could I put it? It's a fact of reality. Bureaucracies are going to develop. The best you could do is like what China does. That's why they do the anti-corruption campaigns, is to get rid of those people. And
get rid of the worthless ones.
Sure, and then you could democratize the system more. I mean, Stalin had a struggle against the bureaucracy in the 1930s. Which ultimately failed. He was outmaneuvered by by the bureaucrats within the party, by the revisionists.
Okay, I'm going to get back on track here. Yeah. Which is not to say I'm not pro bureaucracy. I'm just kind of wondering what they meant. And then also there was another thing that comes up, which is opportunists. Mm-hmm. Right? And could we call those people who are sort of like populist demagogues of a sense? They were saying popular things for political gain, but in the end, they were sort of sheepdogs. Is that what opportunists were? People who were saying things that were currently in the zeitgeist and popular, saying flowery revolutionary things, but sort of defaulting back to bourgeoisie tendencies like a la Bernie Sanders and AOC, just sheepdogs.
Yeah, I think you could consider that an opportunist. There are a few types of people we could use that term for, and that's definitely one of them. I do think that would be correct. I'm trying to think of another good example for opportunism for you, but like when I'm like, my brain is like blank. Mao engaged in some opportunism near the end of his life. Certain countries and movements that they supported, I would consider to be opportunistic.
Where the meat of what they were doing did not match their rationale for it, and it was in violation of the principles of Marxism.
Yeah, basically. So, I think that would be correct.
So you could argue that our opportunist is a popular revisionist, a politically popular revisionist.
So opportunism and revisionism go hand in hand. I don't think you have to necessarily be a revisionist to be an opportunist, but yes, revisionists are opportunists.
Okay. All right. So we've talked about the different types of leftcoms, councilists, Bordigists, and communizers. Communizers are effectively a meme. They want instant. At least they're better. Some of them believe in a transitionary state. Some of them, we've already covered communizer, didn't we? Or did we not do that one?
We didn't yet, but we've talked about communizers before.
Okay. So versus ML deviations, Maoism, Hoxhaism, and Trotskyism, do they share things in common? Where do they depart? Have leftcoms ever had revolutions?
Well, so yeah, with the first one we've already kind of talked about because we were just riffing about.
Do they share things in common? What are the things that Maoists? So specifically, that's the thing. I saw a thing about Maoism, and I really got to thinking about Maoism earlier. And we don't have the same energy for other people who say they're Maoists as we do as people who are Gonzaloites. Gonzaloites are just like a bunch of thugs who are just doing shit and barely having a Marxian rationale for what they're doing. They're not even a good example. So Maoists, I don't even know how you have to kind of take them on a case-by-case basis, huh?
Yeah, you do. And some of them are a little more like open to the idea that like, hey, maybe China's actually not like capitalist and revisionist. But generally speaking, all of these fall under an ultra-left deviation, and they're all dogmatic, right? Which it's something Mao called dogmato-revisionism.
What's the difference between in between a fledgling communist party that is actually has a shot, is in like, let's say, the southern hemisphere, and is organizing against their autocratic government to overthrow it? Wouldn't they just be called a Maoist nowadays?
Not necessarily. It depends on, because a Maoist is someone who takes protracted people's war as a universal principle of Marxism, which protracted people's war works well in certain conditions. So if some people can pull that off, particularly in agrarian countries, then you do that. But I think throughout most of the world these days, it's not really applicable. So it's you can't call that universal. Like think of here in America, it would not be. So
yeah. So hypothetically, these same people, if they woke up and there was a sort of a rapture situation, their current government was gone and they seized power, by their own definition, they would not be Marxists anymore because they were able to implement their goals without a protracted war.
They would still be Maoists because they would still continue. The issue with Maoists is they reject any sort of practical concessions that Marxist-Leninists have to make. So like with China and they're opening up in reform, Maoists are very against that because that the primary stage of socialism to Maoists is not a thing. They're like, no, you're either socialist or you're capitalist, right? They sort of themselves reject this transitional phase. They don't reject transitional phases in general, but they see what Deng did as a vulgarization of Marxism, essentially.
So they feel like, well, that's why they call themselves Maoists, right? Because in that position, they defy Marx.
I would argue that everyone we're talking about defies Marxism because
I agree.
They're not utilizing materialist dialectics. They're treating it like a religion.
These impotent fucking beta leftcoms who's like, go read Marx. I read Marx. I'm like, I am more affirmed in my position than ever before. Have you guys read this?
Yeah, well,
I don't understand. Or are they reading leftcom cliff notes for understanding what Marx means and just getting the whole thing fucked up?
So there's two ways to do this. One, you read people like Marx and you understand what Marx was saying in his time and space, and then you utilize that methodology that you observed Marx demonstrating, and you look at the world you live in today to try and figure out what to do. On the other hand, you could just open up a book by Marx or say Mao or Stalin, and you could read it, and then you could just try and apply that to our current conditions, and anything that violates that is revisionism. You know what I mean? So that's not Marxism.
But they're not even doing that because they're not for transitionary republics.
Who?
Which is what Marx
the
would have been.
leftcoms?
Yeah.
No, well, I think that they would argue that they're I don't know. They're fairly confusing. Like,
they're confusing and they're not. They all have different rationales. And honestly, it feels like it's just a thing that they put in their bio. It's just a fucking thing that they put in their bio. But the thing
is it's compatible, and all of the above, whether it's leftcoms, Maoists, Hoxhaists, they all come under Marxist-Leninists, posts on the internet or wherever, and they literally regurgitate the same type of shit that you'll read in the Western media. You know what I mean? So they end up becoming anti-communists. They are left anti-communists.
So, which brings up to the next one here. So we already know, have leftcoms ever had revolutions? No. Right? No. So that one's easy. Let's not even fucking waste time. No, they're big fucking goose eggs. They're not even like fucking losers. They're like never did anythings, which is like worst. At least fucking losers tried. They had to have some skin in the game in order to fucking lose. Leftcoms aren't even fucking losers. They're literally fucking idealist LARPers, which is like so infinitely more fucking cringe. If these leftcoms, like if I saw earnestly leftcoms trying to overthrow a bourgeois government, I'd be like, okay, well, fucking low key, I'm not really going to fucking say much about this because I like what I'm seeing.
Oh, we'd help them.
I literally, like, I like that. No, I like that. But these loser LARPers never even did that.
No.
They like impotent fucking armchair philosophy. They're like literally they're anti-action, anti-praxis, and ultimately anti-Marxist.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, they've divorced theory from practice, which is like, because that's everything is theory. But Marx said this, Marx said that, and it's like, okay, but the theory has to be put into practice. And then we have to look at that practice and adjust the theory based on that practice and put it back into practice. And it's that never-ending cycle of theory into practice and practice into theory and theory into practice and so on and so forth.
Yeah. But not only that, what I would argue is, like, let's say they're right that commodity production makes it not it's a degenerated worker state or whatever. I'd say, okay, you would still chomp at the bit to even enact that anywhere you're from. So like, please shut up. Number one, and number two, that creates a new structure by which immanentizes, it creates a new structure which then immanentizes the potentiality for the next contradiction, for the next phase of government, which would reconcile some of those contradictions born of the first one.
And I'll tell you what, if I have to live in a world where there only exists capitalist states and degenerated worker states, I'm going to pick the degenerated worker state every fucking time.
Even though that's a nonsense phraseology, like that's just nonsense. That's okay.
Still
So
choose it.
I would 100%. Yes, I would still choose it, but also it's a nonsense Nothenberg statement. Usually, so left anti-communism. Usually, go ahead. What is left anti-communism?
Yeah, right.
And what are the things they share in common with some of the Marxist leftcoms?
So Michael Parenti talks about left anti-communism in Black Shirts and Reds, but he's generally speaking about non-Marxist socialists who don't like the Soviet Union. However, when he talks about
anarchists,
stuff like that, I don't think he has necessarily like the Bordigist and council communists and communizers in mind. However, when he talks about the quote-unquote pure socialists, right, that is literally on point, like with how I feel about these people, right? When he says,
I did read that chapter.
Yeah, but the best part is when he says, I quote, "The pure socialists' ideological anticipations remain untainted by existing practice. They do not explain how the manifold functions of a revolutionary society would be organized, how external attack and internal sabotage would be thwarted, how bureaucracy would be avoided, scarce resources allocated, policy differences settled, priorities set, and production and distribution conducted. Instead, they offer vague statements about how the workers themselves would directly own and control the means of production and will arrive at their own solutions through creative struggle. No surprise, then, that the pure socialists support every revolutions except the ones that succeed."
Their only criteria for what a state is and what they would do is a check mark of things that they're mad at other successful revolutions for doing.
Yeah.
That's it.
And
they don't have policy other than the ones that they're mad about.
That quote is so good because it's applicable to leftcoms, anarchists, like everyone who's out here going, there's no such thing as actually existing socialism. This is all capitalism. It's like, okay, so please show us how it's done.
Marx said the transitionary state would have aspects of the social capital relationship. He's fucking said that over and over again.
But then people want to get into, okay, but the transitional phase wasn't supposed to last this long, or the transitional phase was supposed to look like this or that, and it's like,
where did it say that?
Well,
it seems like he left it oblique on purpose.
Say that Marx did say, hey, the transitional phase will be like a year, and then say that when we tried it in practice in our current conditions, it lasted more than a year. Well, what's correct then?
Yeah. Marx does not benefit from the long view of history that we had. He was calling balls and strikes in real time, and we saw what he called this or that change in real time when he had new examples to look at.
Sure.
We have manifold more examples to view, and you and I can comb through the books and find many more failed revolution than Marx had the benefit of learning from.
Oh yeah, especially now that we've seen the Soviet Union and all of that's what I mean. It's
not only the Soviet Union, but the response to it.
Sure. Yeah. Which is, it's fucking wild. But no, and like you said before, Marx was not a rigid thinker at all. Marx informed his theory with experience, with practice, which is why they changed their views with the Paris Commune. So I don't care if Marx said the dictatorship of the proletariat or the lower phase of communism will look like this or that. But then in practice, when we actually do it and we have to grapple with reality, and there's all of these practical considerations and external and internal contradictions and issues that spring up, and so we have to do it a little bit differently. Like that's Marxism, is like learning
and
from
also
that experience.
He didn't. And that's a nice concession, or if he had, that's a rationale to explain to them why it worked out differently than he had said, but he didn't say.
No, not really. Marx had very little to say about what socialism would look like.
No, he was very interested in the dictatorship of the proletariat.
And even with that, he didn't again, he didn't talk too much about that stuff. Marx criticized capitalism. That was his biggest thing. It was Lenin.
Is that why Marx as a figure is so much more palatable and accessible to these leftcoms, these sort of non-Marxian leftists and anarchists and everything, because he gives such a succinct criticism of capital?
I think, and I think if Marx were to lead a revolution and govern a society, they would fucking hate him because he would have done things that were practical at the time that furthered the revolution, but that doesn't align with how leftcoms view the world.
They would call him a hypocrite. They would instantly, he would be reviled like Stalin was.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. He just he wasn't ever in the position to be reviled like that.
Okay. Why is left communism relevant today?
So I would argue it's not when you're organizing in real life. Outside the internet, you don't run into these people. And even the anarchists that I used to organize with in the IWW, they're better than leftcoms. They're like Cuba based, the Black Panther Party based, Venezuela based. Like you know what I mean? They have a head on their shoulders. Yeah. But on the internet, these fuckers,
especially the ones who are organized and working and understand about beneficial compromises, which move the needle.
Yeah.
They understand how non-Western states coming into ascendancy is a net gain for everybody.
Yeah, no, I guess the answer to the question is the only place that they're relevant is on the internet.
And even then only on TikTok. And like Reddit?
You find them on Reddit, but they have their own subreddits. They don't come crawling in. You know what I mean? But you run into them. But
leftcoms only exist to fucking eat clout off of MLs. It's sad and it's weird.
Yeah, no,
and
basically.
all of their followers are liberals.
Yeah.
It's fucking
if
pathetic,
they have
bro. Take a shower and go on a date, dog. You leftcoms are fucking worthless.
Yeah, no.
Literally, there's no point for them to be alive. Like the state of the state of Marxist organizing would be infinitely better if they all instantly disappeared.
Well, yeah, I agree. And it doesn't matter what they think about this, that, or the other thing. History will keep moving. China will keep moving. These countries, like places like that they don't approve of, will keep on moving on and doing their thing. And the multipolar world that multipolarism is bad. It's like, okay, well, it's a fact of reality right now. It's happening whether you like it or not. So
and it's so bizarre. Okay, so can MLs and leftcoms work together?
Probably not. Probably not.
Right?
Probably not. I mean, it depends.
I will say this. Can I say a controversial thing?
Sure.
Cappy, am I allowed to? Most of these leftcoms would shut the fuck up if they had access to a party that was traditionally Marxist-Leninist that had some fucking clout and they saw them actually doing stuff. They would shut the fuck up and get in line.
Yeah, not controversial at all.
Not controversial.
I do think in the West, it's easy to get disillusioned because in America, bro, we're fucked, and there is no perfect party. All of these parties fucking suck. CPUSA sucks, ACP sucks, PSL sucks. All of them have their issues. I like the PSL more than the other ones, but but they all suck. Everything after the Black Panther Party was fucking awful, and so I get it.
But even those parties are sort of have been encapsulated and removed from the actual politic in America.
Yeah,
they're not platformed. They're not in debates. They don't hold congressional seats. There's a firewall.
A lot of them have been infiltrated and declawed.
Yes. However, it's not. There's no communist party with clout that's doing stuff that is politically viable here. And is that true of every Western country?
I mean, yeah, I would say so. I do think, though, if these people joined a party and it benefited them in their life and they were able to help working class people and actually further along this process of building a new world, I think they would look differently on it.
100%, yes, because they're literally idealists who are fully divorced from participating in politics. They have no idea how to legislate. They have no idea what policies actually. All they can offer are vague, nebulous, a country should do this.
Yeah, like
okay, how would you enact that? I don't know. They don't know.
Yep.
All they have are critiques of successful revolutions. They have no policy in and of themselves, and they have no political viability. Is left communism purely a thing that is facilitated within liberalism?
I'm not sure, but I'm comfortable enough to say that at the very least, it is a rejection of Marxism-Leninism. But whether or not it has to, because I would say it wasn't born out of liberalism, but these days it has. I feel like left-coms have more in common with liberals.
Yes,
and they're very anti-communist, and you know what I mean. They reject all of the necessary things. That's the most annoying thing. If you reject,
Cappy, to some. Go ahead. They reject
this
what?
is the last thing I'm going to say. If you reject centralization and strict party discipline and etc., then what do you have? Because all of the revolutions up until this point that were successful would not have lasted a single fucking month if not for those things.
And not only that, Cappy, like I'm thinking about like a Maoist who rejects a vanguard, and yet they're in a party that has 100 members.
Yeah,
brother, you are the vanguard. Like, what do you mean? Like,
I like them more than the left comms, though.
I honestly have very little beef with the Maoists. Like, go ahead, topple that government. Go ahead. I'm not even mad at you, dog. Go for it.
Especially the ones in the Philippines and India. They're doing their thing. It may have been the last 70 years they've been doing it, but
shout out to the proud people of Kerala, of whom I am a distant. They are my distant ancestors in Kerala, India. Yeah,
based. Yeah.
Yeah, 0.02% for the record, somehow. There's a story there somewhere. I don't know. Why should we support actual... but the thing is, with these Maoists, you're against centralization and you're against vanguardism. Some of them might say yes. It's like, brother, there's 30 of you making pamphlets. Who in your party are you against?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think
what you are the council. Dog.
I don't think Maoists would necessarily say they're against it, but they do. Like you said, Mayo was criticizing the I guess idea of a vanguard that Marxist-Leninists have in the modern day, which is it's ridiculous.
Right, but yeah, I don't even know what to. I don't even know what to say to those people because everything, especially anarchists who are against central vanguard or whatever. I don't even know, brother, everything that you guys organize for is committees and councils. It's just that, but with what the party position is. What are you talking about? No, but it's bad somehow.
Well, we're just centralizing all of that under a party leadership.
Right.
Yeah. It makes more sense. It's more efficient.
Are these people, their problems seem to be largely born out of being born in a system and learning through osmosis to be reflexively anti-communist?
Yeah, I would say that it's a lot of just leftover bourgeois individualism and the fact that they haven't deconstructed their liberal worldview enough yet.
And low test.
It could be. I don't know.
It could be. Yeah, I'm thinking so. Okay, so why should we, last question here, why should we support actual existing socialist movements despite any flaws they might have, Cappy?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite simple. I just said it before. You don't get to call yourself a Marxist if you don't support the people, the parties, and the movements that actually attempted to implement Marxism in reality. It's that simple. The fact of the matter is that we live in a world where these countries have tried their best to implement Marxism, to liberate the working class, to feed people, to clothe people, to house people, to eradicate poverty, to produce according to need, and to build societies that are far better than the one we currently live under. And so I just don't get at all why you wouldn't support that. It may not be perfect. There may be issues. Reality is imperfect. Reality has issues. This is fucking history. You're never going to get a perfect revolution. So you might as well at least put your lot in with the revolution that's fucking doing something to liberate people.
Now, Cappy, so the majority of these leftcoms are people who can't buy alcohol yet. So keeping that in mind, what should they do if they heard anything and any of this broke through their sort of bad internalization of Marxism hitherto hearing this podcast? What should they do if there is a leftcom who's curious? What would get them on the right course?
I think honestly engaging with the current reality we live in and trying to utilize Marx's materialist method to analyze the situation. You know what I mean? Rather than just regurgitating a book that they read from 200 years ago. Actually think about what's going on here today and think about how we could move human society forward, because that's what we all want. And second of all, don't be afraid to fucking read someone like Lenin or Mao or Stalin. I mean, you may not agree with all of it, but there's something that you're going to gain from it. There has to be something in there you're going to agree with. I didn't like any of those fellas at one time either. And guess what? I read them and I said, I'm an idiot.
And they're bitches. All right, Cappy, is there anything else you want to say to these people?
No, that's it.
All right, get the fuck out of here. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.